The biggest story this morning, new cycle of power. All the president's men are finally moving closer to action. What's the big deal? Githu Muigai Kibaki appointee finally paves the way for Uhuru loyalists, and there's a big circle on the front page of the Daily Nation. Yeah, that's a new circle with J. Muturi there, Kinodhi Mbugua, Dr. Fred Matiang'i, Ken Ogeto, and of course the nominee for to head the state law office as AG, Justice Paul Kihara Kariuki. On the Standard, the same story is also making headlines. Uhuru turns his office around in final term. President replaces AG he inherited from Kibaki, elevates longtime friend J, and sends a law advisor Abdikadir on diplomatic mission. The story goes on page 6 and 7 of the Standard. Uhuru changes advisors as Githu quits. New appointments mark change of fortunes for Uhuru confidence. That's the other headline on page 6 and 7. AG's reign at state law office was dogged by silent supremacy wars. Of course, very interesting headlines on the Standard. Let's just take a look at some of the other headlines in relation to that. Uhuru moves to secure circle of power. That's one of the headlines on page 4. On page 5, they have a headline, man tapped to head state law office has reached stint at judiciary. Now that's talking about Justice Paul Kihara Kariuki. And another headline, when Githu threatened to have Raila Kalonzo executed on December 7th, 2017. The AG speaking about the planned by then swearing in of NASA principles. It is also one of the biggest talking points on social media. Attorney General is one of the trending hashtags. Let me sample some of the tweets. One here by lawyer Donald Kipkorir at Donald B. Kipkorir. He says, former AG Githu Muigai is my friend and was my professor, but he disappointed me as our Attorney General. He became a horse whisperer instead of an oracle to the king. He told the king what he wanted to hear instead of what the gods have said. And AG is a prophet, not court jester. That's one lawyer, Donald Kipkorir. Another very senior lawyer, senior counsel, Ahmed Nasir Abdullahi at Ahmed Nasir. To be a successful Attorney General, you must have fire in the belly. Professor Githu did not have. Justice Kihara does not have. Both are very decent men, great lawyers. Oops, I just lost it. Yes, great lawyers, but both are not transformative. One more, Amakanji Thomas. AG Githu Muigai, the fake proclaimed mortician, has bowed out. No legacy left as Kenya's Attorney General other than being reduced to State House spokesman, threatening Raila Odinga of high treason, which we were eagerly waiting for, just like us. And he goes on to say something else. One more tweet here by Timothy Njoya, Reverend Timothy Njoya. Says, even though I did not totally endorse Githu Muigai's position in The Hague in defense of Uhuru and Ruto, I pay tribute to him as the most legally advanced and articulate Attorney General in the history of Kenya. I wish him a happy future. Joining me now to take a look at some of these headlines, political analyst Barak Muluka. It's a pleasure to have you in studio.
Great.
For such a long time.
Thank you. You don't invite me anymore because
no, this probably you were waiting for this.
You've been associating me with politicians, and you invite politicians themselves. You don't bring me. I'm only an associate.
My apologies.
An innocent associate.
My apologies.
No problem. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you.
Happy Valentine's.
Happy Valentine's to you.
But of course I love every day.
Of course.
In different ways.
And you have a very interesting philosophy when it comes to love.
Yeah, philosophy of love. We'll
yes.
talk about it later.
Yes, of course, away from Valentine issues. This is the biggest talking point. Yes, some people say it was expected that AG Githu Muigai for a long time was always on his way out, even as we headed towards the elections last year, that he has been on his way out. There were indications that President Uhuru Kenyatta had already started headhunting for his replacement earlier than yesterday. So that statement by the President on Twitter, and if you look at it, he says he is sad. If I could just look at that.
Yes.
Yeah, if I could just, because it was a very interesting tweet from the President.
Yes.
That he has been saddened. Okay, I think I've lost it. But yes, the President said he has been saddened by the sudden resignation of the Attorney General. Do you believe that statement was genuine?
It sounds poetic. He's saddened by the sudden resignation of the Attorney General. You see, attorneys general must, by and large, be systems people. They belong to the executive, essentially, and even when they have served in Parliament as ex officio members, they still remain at the beck and call of the appointing authorities. In that regard, the Honorable Attorney General Githu Muigai has been no exception. Contrary to what one of the tweets has said, I think the only exception in this country has been James Karuga, who perhaps very few people who are now in their early adulthood would know about. I've had the privilege of longevity, and therefore I can talk about all of them, from Charles Njonjo to Karuga to to Kamau Kamere, to Guy Matthew Muli, to Amos Wako, and to Githu Muigai, and I can tell the difference among all of them. Karuga, of course, could not survive because he was extremely independent-minded, and he was the shortest serving, followed only by the melodramatic and comical Kamau Kamere, all within very short stints. Matthew Guy Muli, who did not seem even to know what he was doing there. If Donna Kipkorir talks of a horse whisperer, then Matthew Guy Muli, who was there during the time that people like Dr. Robert Ouko were killed by this country, was even completely clueless. Githu Muigai, an extremely brilliant gentleman, a fantastic mind, and one who understood what his master wanted and played along those lines. And I do think that he must have always had 2 to 3 different sets of opinions at any one given time, and just waiting to see and hear what the boss wanted, and he would produce it. Of course, the drama...
So you do agree with some of the tweets that, yes, he told the boss what the boss wanted to hear?
Absolutely. I think it's very difficult to find somebody of the cut and make of James Karuga, who served for a very, very brief stint, 1980, I believe, to 82. He was appointed Attorney General after Charles Njonjo resigned to contest for the parliamentary seat, what was then called Kikuyu constituency, after the then sitting member of parliament resigned, obviously to create space for him, and Njonjo went on to be appointed Minister for Constitutional Affairs, and Karuga became the new AG. He was not one of those very loud, very visible attorneys general, but he was very efficient in execution of his duties, his advice to the state, as the chief legal advisor in state law, and because of that he could not last long. Justice Paul Kihara.
What does it say about the job of Attorney General as a government's chief legal advisor? If at all, for you to survive in that position, you are reduced to a court jester, to just telling the king what the king wants to hear, then it's not a position that many professionals in that sector should be looking forward to taking up, because is it just the title? If at all you're not going to have any proper impact.
I think it depends to a very large extent on the comportment of the king himself and his philosophical attitude and approach to public affairs. I think, for example, that those who served under retired President Moi had it a lot easier than the people who have served under both Presidents Mwai Kibaki and Uhuru Kenyatta, and that sounds very paradoxical. But why? In the sense that when you look at both Presidents Kenyatta, Uhuru Kenyatta, and President Mwai Kibaki, they sometimes have impulsively acted outside the prism of law, and have had their attorneys general coming out to try and defend the indefensible. And Attorney General Gideon Muigai has from time to time found himself having to distance himself from what the appointing authorities have done or said. If you looked at President Moi, on the other hand, Moi always acted within the framework of law, and where the law did not exist, he ensured that one was enacted so that he could then go on to employ it. So his attorneys general, and for the longest time, really the longest serving of them all, was Amos Wako. They ensured that they were doing everything within the framework of the law. You may come out and say, oh, this is not a good law, but it was now the law. They did it time and again. And I don't think that you're ever going to find an Attorney General who is going to act outside the prescribed script. And we may ask ourselves what the script here would be. And when we are looking at these people here, we also ought to recognize that in the Judicial Service Commission, there are very significant changes. And we'll be looking at those significant changes in the JSC as well. But just looking at the front pages, and this Uhuru turning his office around in the final term, that's the headline on the Standard. New circle of power. The president even getting rid of some of his very senior advisors, talking about Abdikadir Mohammed, who's now been sent as an envoy, sent away as an envoy to South Korea. Yes, one of the senior-most political advisors who was within earshot of the president throughout his first term. People like now the outgoing State House Comptroller, Lenayapa, being sent away also as an ambassador. Now, in their place, you see very new faces. Former Governor Kinodi Mbogo now taking up leadership inside the State House. Of course, Matiang'i's position growing by the day. Ken Ogeto now replacing Jemuturi. Jemuturi getting even closer to the president now. Of course, there was that power struggle between, or Cold War between the Solicitor General and his boss, the AG, from time to time. But now Jemuturi's position seems to be even getting stronger. Now you see Justice Paul Kihara Kariuki getting closer. The president is surrounding himself with a new team, new faces that have not been as close. Probably they were working within government circles, but were not as close to State House as they now are. What does this mean for the president himself getting into the new term? I think this is now throwing pretexts away and coming out as what you would really want to be, perhaps what you've always been. But fundamentally, before we even talk about this very squarely, it behooves us to put in a footnote on the diplomatic mission and the tendency to treat the diplomatic docket as purgatory. That when you are getting rid of these people, this is the soft landing pad where they must repose for a while before they drift into oblivion. It's very unfortunate. Lots of governments throughout the world treat the foreign mission assignment very seriously, because like that is the face of the government. These are the people who spot opportunities for the country within the international circuit. and they are able to send home signals, and you are able to take advantage of the spaces and the opportunities that do exist in that circuit. You don't send there sulking individuals who are feeling demoted and deflated, and
but it is better than dumping them and forgetting about them.
For them, yes, maybe, because then they can spend the evening sampling wines and meats in cocktail gin and tonic functions, maybe, but not so good for the country, because the people who go onto that kind of assignment are supposed to be people who understand what is good for the country and who are committed to it. But Fred, very quickly, because I know you're running out of time, we must say something about this.
The new circle of power.
The new circle of power. The new circle of power, the philosophy was defined for us last year by the Jubilee Deputy Chairman, Mr. David Murade, whom I was privileged to sit with in the same class at the University of Nairobi in the 1970s. We belonged to the same tutorial group led by the late Professor Joseph Dondas, and there were only 7 of us, and David Murade was one of them, and I was privileged to be there. I can speak to that. I can speak to that. I'm not citing this history in vain. Yes. But Dave Murade defined this very clearly. He told us that we were going to see a metamorphosed President Uhuru Kenyatta, who would be more lethal, who would be more brutal, who would be more ruthless. And this
is the face of that brutality.
This is it. You have got to look at it within the ambit of the legal docket, broadly speaking. You start, of course, with the Judicial Service Commission. In fact, that is what I would be fronting, or I would juxtapose these two happenings, this one here and what is happening in JSC, because JSC is the mother of the judiciary. And of course, Githu Muigai himself has been in the Judicial Service Commission. We have seen other members of the JSC who have been removed and put in other places to minimize attrition, of course, and contestation, so that they go away quietly. Then you put in people who are going to be a lot more state compliant, and this is all going to lead into making forays into the judiciary itself, which the executive keeps complaining about. They keep saying that the judiciary is frustrating them. And of course, the judiciary is put in place by the Judicial Service Commission. And the JSC, over the past few years, has given this country a very assertive judiciary that disturbs the executive. And so begin by making this.
And of course, there was that talk of President Kenyatta when he promised to revisit the issue of the judiciary.
Kunyorosha.
Now we're seeing in one push so many changes, in one single day, so many changes in that sector of government.
The Kunyorosha has begun.
Changing all the legal advisors around the president, adjustments within the JSC. What does it say? What does it say when the president goes and focuses on the legal arm of government all in one day and does all those changes?
You put your chessmen in the right places on the chessboard before you begin moving them in the direction that you'd like them to go. So the floor is being laid, the wedding guests are getting set, and the wedding is about, the wedding party is about to begin. Yeah.
Wow, very interesting headlines this morning, and of course an even more interesting analysis of the same by Barak Muluka, the man from Emanyuria. Of course, that's the biggest talking point today, the changes in the State Law Office with the exit of Attorney General Githu Muigai to be replaced by nominee Justice Paul Kihara Kariuki, and the changes there, of course, depicted very vividly on the front page of the Daily Nation. And of course, Uhuru turns his office around in final term. That's the headline on the Standard. Let's take a break. We'll be back to discuss a lot more, including the changes in the judiciary.